Okay guys, today we're going to be multiplying some fractions. Go ahead and get your notebook out and write down your title, Multiplying Fractions. I know you guys are going to like this a little bit more than adding and subtracting. There's a whole lot less steps to multiplying fractions. So your I can statement is, I can multiply whole numbers and fractions. Something that you really need to pay attention to, you have to remember. Anytime you see of in a story problem, it usually means multiplication. So like if a story problem says, on Mars your weight is about 1/3 of your weight on Earth, see that of means times, means you're going to have to use some multiplication. And especially if they give you a fraction like 1/3 of, then it's going to be some sort of multiplication. Of means multiply. Anytime you see of in a problem, you should immediately think of multiply. I think we've talked about that before today. Okay, so our problem here, you don't have to write down the whole problem, but you do need to write down the numbers at the bottom here. It says, I need 3/4 a cup of cranberry juice to make a batch of punch. Batch means one whole complete recipe. I'm having a big group over and need to make 8 batches. How much cranberry juice will I need? Well, if each batch takes 3/4 and I'm doing 8 batches, I could use repeated addition. I could do 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 3 all the way down here, and I have 8 3/4 there. And I could do that math just fine because I already know how to add fractions, and I'm going to end up with something crazy on top and crazy on bottom, and it's just going to be a long drawn out process. So we might want to change that and do multiplication, because we know that repeated addition is the same as multiplication. So we set up our problem of 3/4 times 8, because I have 8 batches and each batch needs 3/4 of a cup. Alright, so step 1 of multiplying fractions is you have to make sure that both numbers are a fraction. Well, in our original we had 3/4 times 8. Well, all I have to do to make this a fraction is put it over 1, because if I need one item and I have one item to make a whole, and I have 8 of those, I have 8 items. So we just put it over 1. If you see a whole number and you need it made into a fraction form, you just put it over 1. It works out really easy. So for instance, if I had 1/3 times 9, I would just put it over 1, and it means the same thing. If I had 2/3 times 6, I would just put the 6 over 1. Now I have both numbers are fractions. Alright, this is going to be a part that some of you are going to choose to skip. Now, I'm not suggesting that you skip it, because if you don't do this part, you're going to end up with crazy big answers, and then you have to do more work at the end. If you can see the relationship between the numbers and it's easy enough to do, then you go ahead and do something we like to call cross-reducing. We've learned that we can reduce, like say that we have 30 seconds at the end of our problem. We can reduce it by dividing both numbers by maybe 8, and then we're going to get 2/4, and then we have to keep going from there. Well, cross-reducing is where we don't have one fraction, we have the numbers that are across from each other. So 4 and 8 are across from each other, and 3 and 1 are across from each other. So cross-reducing means, hey, if you see something that these numbers have in common that I could divide out of them, if I could divide it by the same number up here and the same number down here, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, the 3 and the 1 here, if I divide by, the only thing I can divide 1 by is 1, and if I divide it by 1, I'm going to get the same number. So this one is kind of out. We can't cross-reduce the 3 or the 1, but we might be able to cross-reduce this 8 and 4. So you think, okay, well, what can I divide both the 8 and the 4 by? It has to be the same number. If I can't say, ooh, 4, I can divide that by 2, if the number across from it, I can't also divide by 2. So I'm going to do some cross reducing here. Well, I could do a lowest common multiple chart of 8 and 4, or greatest common factor, sorry, 8 and 4, and see what they have in common. Well, to make 8, I can do 1 times 8, or 2 times 4. To make 4, I can do 1 times 4, or 2 times 2. Well, I see that they have 4 in common. They're both factors. So I can say, hey, let's divide both the top and the bottom by 4. And then I can cross. That will give me a good cross reduction. So if I do that, 4 divided by 4, this is going to cross reduce to 1. And 8 divided by 4, this is going to cross reduce to 2. And now I have a brand new problem. So I showed you both forms here. I have, when I cross reduced, remember the 8 became 2 and the 4 became 1. So I just substituted those numbers in there. And then the last step of multiplying fractions is a simple one. It's just multiply across. So it's like I shoot an arrow through the top and I multiply those two and I get an answer. And I shoot an arrow through the bottom and I multiply those two and I get an answer. I know this is different from what we have talked about with adding and subtracting. With adding and subtracting, you never, ever, ever add these bottom numbers. You don't even deal with them. You just make sure they're the same. But with multiplying, we have to multiply through. So here's our original 2 fractions before cross-reducing, because some of you will find cross-reducing easier, and some of you will just want to do it like this, and that's okay. But we multiply through the top. 3 times 8 is 24. And we multiply through the bottom. 4 times 1 is 4. And then, of course, the top gets too heavy, and I have to put it in the house, and I divide it out, and I get an answer of 6. Both of these problems, I got the same answer. Here I got 6, here I got 6. And, of course, step 4 is always going to be simplify, which we kind of already did in there. Okay, so let's practice these steps. Step 1 is to make sure that we have a fraction for both. And as you see, we have 3/4 here and 5/6 here, so we definitely have fractions for both sides. Then step 2 is cross reduce if possible. So here's our, we look at this one and this one, and then we look at this one and this one to see if they have something in common that we can divide out. Well, 4 and 5 do not have something in common, so we're just going to leave them 4 and 5. And then number 3. Okay, so our 3 and our 6, if they have something in common, we could do greatest common factors here. We can say, okay, what numbers multiply to make 3? Well, there's only 1 times 3. What numbers multiply to make 6? 1 times 6, and 2 times 3. The greatest common factor there is 3, so we're going to divide both the 6 and the 3 by 3. And now we have new numbers. So this crosses out and becomes 1. This crosses out and becomes 2 because 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then all we have to do is multiply across. Multiply across, multiply across. Alright, when we multiply across, 1 times 5 equals 5. And 4 times 2 equals 8. And I am done. 5/8. Okay, let's try this one. First step, make sure both are a fraction. Fraction, we're good to go. Alright, and then we see if we can cross reduce. Well, there's nothing that 1 and 6 are going to have in common. Changing that 1 is not going to help me because the only number I can divide by is 1. Let's see here, 6 and 5. Nope, they don't have anything in common because I know 5 is prime. So in this one, all I have to do is multiply across. And I get 5 on top and 36 on bottom. And then I'm all done. Alright, so step number 1, check to see if they're both fractions. Well, this 36 is most definitely not a fraction, so we need to put it over 1. Step 2, cross reduce if possible. Well, this is not going to cross reduce at all because, yep, just to reset one, so I'll need to go ahead and put that back there. Let's try that again. There we go. But, talking about cross reduce, this 36 and this 4, they have something in common. We could do greatest common factors, factors that make 36. 1 times 36, 2 times, let's see, 18 maybe, 3 times 12, 4 times 6, oh, not 6, what was I talking about? 4 times 9, oops, nothing times 5, oh, and then it has 6 there in the middle. Okay, so then we do our factors of 4, 1 times 4, n times 2. What do they have in common? The biggest one, they have a 4. They do have 2 in common, but we want the biggest one, so we're going to divide by 4 here. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. Here we have 1. Here we have 9. And now we have a brand new problem. It looks like here's a brand new problem. We have 9 over 1 times 3 over 1, and we multiply across and simplify, so the answer to this one is just 27. Okay, I have had no one guess the secret number, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to review the clues I have given you, and hopefully today we have someone who gets the secret number. Clue number 1 was 5 in the 10 spot. Clue number 2 is the number's even. Clue number 3, there's an odd number in the 100 spot. Clue number 4, the number is bigger than half of 1,000. Clue number 5, the digit in the 100 spot is divisible by 3. Clue number 6, there's a 4 in the 1 spot. Alright, go ahead and head on over to your class kit. Happy mathing!